Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, as we are here in the middle of June, have Democrats hit their political ceiling? We'll dive into the latest polling as we look towards the midterm elections coming up. And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand. It's totally free to do so. Just search for the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app or visit the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. For any legal questions or challenges, lawgroupnc.com or give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from Melissa Gott and her team coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. We have talked a lot about the upcoming midterm elections. Obviously, a lot of focus here on North Carolina. We have a major United States Senate race coming to the Tar Heel state. That will, of course, include former Democrat Governor Roy Cooper as the Democrat candidate and former head of the Republican National Committee and the North Carolina Republican Party, Michael Whatley, as the Republican candidate in that race. The seat currently held by Senator Thom Tillis, who has announced after 2 terms, 12 years in the United States Senate, that he was hanging up his hat and he would not be running for re-election. So obviously there's been a lot of focus on that race here in North Carolina, and we'll, of course, continue to keep a close eye on that in the weeks and months to come as we get closer to November. But there's something that is starting to grow that I think is an interesting thing to take a look at. And let me preface this entire conversation by saying none of what I'm about to say is an election prediction. I do not like the election prediction business. I do not believe that it is a good business to be in because politics are incredibly dynamic. The situations that determine and can determine elections may have not even happened yet. So none of the conversation that you're going to hear here today and this mid-June as we kind of get ready to the process of ramping up the election season as we get over the next couple of months, none of this is meant to say, oh, this side is going to win or this side is going to lose. But the Democrats do seem to be facing a pretty significant problem right now, and I am going to call it the political ceiling. Over the last decade, Democrats have invested an incredible amount of capital and resources into anti-Trump. That is their largest policy platform. We saw this in great detail in 2016, which I think in large part was the reason that Donald Trump had such a successful election night back in November of 2016. Why was that the case? Because Hillary Clinton and the Democrat Party did not really have any great unique ideas that they were running on. They ran on basket of deplorables. Donald Trump is a scumbag. We don't like him. He's an evil, awful racist, so on and so forth. All the typical things that you've heard out of the mouth of Democrats over the last 10 years. That was not a successful way to run an election in 2016. Don't take my word for it. Take a look at the election results. Abundantly clear to anybody that followed the 2016 election. We then now go to where we are in 2016, looking at President Donald Trump's second term in the Oval Office after Joe Biden having a successful election victory in November of 2020. And here we are up against another midterm election. As I have stated, and as is fact, looking back at history, midterm elections always, and when I say always in this case, I mean always favor the party that is in the minority. The party that is not in charge, which is right now the Democrat Party, should have a banner year coming up in November. And there is still a likelihood that they do, in fact, have that banner year coming up in November. But some of the polling, some of the trends, some of the information that I've been looking at, and I'm for those that are longtime followers of me back from my time hosting mornings in Wilmington, you know that I've talked about political polling a lot. Political polling to me is fascinating. Now, that's not to say that political polling is perfect, because it's not. There are plenty of flaws in polling. But it is a fascinating exercise, and there's a lot of amazing data in crosstabs in political polling that I think you can extrapolate a lot of data from. Polls, right off the bat, are snapshots, right? You ask an individual at a given period of time and in a given moment, what is their thought on X, Y, or Z issue? And you get an answer from them immediately. It's not a dynamic thing. You ask, you get the answer at a set period of time, and then you publish the results. So political polls should be looked at, and when I'm looking at them, when I'm going through some of the details and data on these polls, I look at it as it should be, which is a snapshot. At this given period of time, or at this specific time, individuals thought this way about this issue. The one thing that you can take away from political polling is the trends. That's more of what I take away when I look at these polls, and I keep a very close eye on them. There's a great resource for those that want to maybe start looking into these a little bit deeper. It's called Real Clear Politics, and more accurately, Real Clear Polling. The website, realclearpolling.com. You can also get to it from the Real Clear Politics website. And they aggregate pretty much every major political poll that is conducted across the United States. And you can dig into gubernatorial races, U.S. Senate, U.S. House, local races, or not local, but statewide races as well. There's a lot of great polling that is available over at Real Clear Polling. They're my go-to when looking at this. And there is a trend line that is not looking good for the Democrat Party. They are running about half of what they should be in a midterm election year when you look at things like the generic congressional vote or the generic congressional ballot. When voters are asked, do you support a Republican or Democrat for United States Congress, United States House? Would you support the Republican or the Democrat? Democrats are up, but not anywhere near the margin that they have been in past midterm elections. When you go back and look at 2018 and go back and look at 2006, those were both years in which Republicans had control. George Bush having a successful election victory in 2004, the 2006 midterm elections. 2016, Donald Trump and the Republicans gained power. The 2018 midterms, the first time that voters had been asked since Trump was in the Oval Office, since Republicans were in charge, do you think that these individuals should remain in power, or should things be shaken up? And again, as I've noted, historically, these midterm elections always have favored the party that is in the minority. And that is right now the Democrat Party. But there seems to be a crack forming, and I think this is in large part due to a lack of messaging and a lack of ideas from the Democrat Party. There is still so much fixation and fascination on Donald Trump, which makes sense, right? He's the president of the United States. I'm not going to sit here and bury the lead and say, oh, Democrats are wasting their time talking about Trump. I don't believe that's the case at all. What I do believe has become and is growing into a much larger problem is that has become their only platform. When you look at and you zoom way out and you look at the last 10 or 11 years worth of political discourse and political discussion, the Democrats have invested so much stock, have invested so much effort, so much time into anti-Trump. That's it. Not necessarily against the policies, but just anti-Trump rhetoric, that newness has completely worn off. The new car smell is gone. And I'm starting to kind of wrap my head around and come to the conclusion that if there are not a plethora of issues that Democrats can really run to the front of the pack here and say, these are the things that we can do better, that we are going to do better if you give us a majority in the United States House and potentially the United States Senate, that they are facing a situation where they could be breaking the trend. Now, that's not to say that they still won't flip the United States House, but they should have a very large banner year electorally coming up in November. But the trend lines and the data is beginning to paint a picture where that might not come to fruition. Now, it's still June. It's still early, but this is something that I think everybody needs to be keeping a very close eye on. So we're talking about the midterm elections coming up in November of this year. A lot of emphasis and importance all across the United States. Obviously, as I mentioned at the open, a lot of discussion and conversation here in North Carolina. No surprise. We have one of the very few Senate races that are deemed to be swing races, where you've got two candidates, no incumbent running in the race, Tom Tillis retiring. And so it's created an interesting dynamic here in North Carolina. There will be a lot of national attention on this state as we move forward through the next couple of months and into November. So we're talking about political polling, talking about how midterm elections favor the political party that is in the minority, that is currently the Democrat Party. And this lines up perfectly with the CNN clip I caught just a couple of days ago. I've saved this, like so many other things, in my stack of stories that I unfortunately do not have a chance to get to here each and every weekday. And so just listen to a little bit of this. This is one of CNN's data guys, one of their pollster guys, looking at some of this data and drawing a very similar conclusion to what I just mentioned. So I'm going to play a little bit of this and I'll break in here in just a second.
I think the warning sign is this: Democrats have an edge, but compared to what we see historically, it's really not that big of a lead. I mean, just take a look here. Okay, this is Congress National June polls, Dem leads, and this is NBC News, midterm years with the GOP press. Look at this. They're up by 5 points, but that's half the lead they had back in 2018 when it was 10 points, and less than half the lead they had back in 2006 with 11 points when Democrats took back the House in both of those years. And now the Democratic lead is on a single hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And it's this type of lead where you say, you know what, Democrats are ahead, but don't count your chickens just quite yet.
And Harry, we've been talking about this. As time goes on, you and I have kept on looking at these numbers, saying it just doesn't look like the numbers we've seen when there have been waves for Democrats in the past. What are the trends in the other polls?
Yeah, okay.
So before he gets to the trends in the other polls, this is where political polling really, I think, does a great job. Again, polls, snapshots, individual question at one specific given time. You can only draw so much from that. It's these trends that you look at. And according currently to the Real Clear Politics average, which aggregates all of these different polls together, looks at all of the different numbers, weighs all the different polls, the Real Clear Politics average for the 2026 generic congressional vote, this generic congressional ballot, is only Democrat +5. And as you just heard the CNN host walk through some of the polling in years past, that number was +10 at this exact point, mid-June in 2018. That number was +11 for Democrats in 2006. 2 years in which there was a Republican in the Oval Office and Republicans controlling the majority in Congress. Right? This is a significant drop-off, a significant change from some of the data, from some of these numbers in the past. And so does this mean that these are the final results? No, it does not. Does this mean that, as I mentioned at the open, that I'm predicting that Democrats are not going to have a good year? No, that's not the case at all. It is, however, beginning to grow this trend that I think is going to be something very interesting to watch in the weeks and months to come. More from this CNN clip.
Hey, so this is not just one poll in which we are seeing this. There is this group of pollsters that are out there that are just not showing the wave you might expect given where the president's approval rating is. Okay, what are we talking about? We're talking about NBC, Marquette University Law School, and Ipsos. Look at where they were January and February, and look at where they are May and June. NBC, down a point. MU Law, down 3 points. Ipsos, basically staying the same. So the Democrats hold these leads, but again, you have this group of pollsters that are out there where this lead, simply put, is not matching what you might expect if you're expecting a Democratic wave.
And that's sort of in a vacuum. What about in a year where Republicans have already made significant gains in terms of redistricting?
Exactly right. So you might say, hey, the president's approval is way down low. You expect Democrats to be way up high, especially given him in the record lows because of the Iran war not happening. And then you put in redistricting. Democrats in the National House vote, look at this, needed to control with redistricting. We really think the Democrats need between a 3 and 4 point advantage in the national vote. You average those polls together, we just saw on the last screen, Ipsos, MU Law, and NBC. It's right on the border there. It's right on the border. It is no guarantee. It is far from a guarantee at this point, if you believe these pollsters.
Very tight. Now, what are the prediction markets saying about Democrats' hopes to retake both chambers?
Yeah, okay. So then you take a look. Okay, look at the Kalshi prediction market. Chance to win midterms. Look, Democrats clearly have the advantage at 78% chance, but that's far from 100%, right? That's a 1 in 5, more than a 1 in 5 chance. Republicans hold on. You look at the Senate, the GOP still has the edge there. More likely than not that the GOP holds on in the Senate, according to Kalshi prediction markets. So basically, I'm putting out this warning sign. These are the warning signs, right? Yes, Democrats probably take back the House, but it's far from a guarantee, or we are not going to get caught like in past years. We ignore those polls that had those warning signs.
Yeah, stand by. We need more information on this, but it's a trend worth watching, Harry, and thank you very much.
So it is a trend worth watching. CNN, of course, sounding the alarm to all of their Democrat viewers and Democrat politicians across the United States that this is what the trend is looking like. These are what the lines are looking like. And I can't sit here and tell you that I'm genuinely surprised that these numbers look the way that they do right now. And why do I say that? I'm meaning this as genuinely as I possibly can. I cannot sit here right now and tell you what a Democrat platform or policy looks like heading into the midterm elections. Right? They talk about the Epstein files. That's not a policy. They talk about affordability. That's not a policy for a Democrat Party that oversaw 9.5% inflation in the summer of 2022. That's not a policy. Other than those two issues, the other big thing is that Orange Man is bad. Donald Trump is bad. And I am kind of getting to this period of time, getting to this conclusion that if the Democrat Party does not start providing some significant messaging to the American people to make their case and say, here are all of the things that are wrong, here's how we're going to fix them, that the blue wave that many Democrats are hoping for in November might not materialize. Will they flip the House? In all likelihood. The Republicans have a very, very slim margin. There's a high likelihood that they do that. Again, it's not a guarantee. It's not set in stone. There's a high likelihood that's the case. In terms of flipping the United States Senate, those odds look relatively low as well in terms of flipping that for the Democrat Party. The likelihood of that, not very high. And so the question is going to be, in the weeks and months to come, and the reason I'm laying this out here in mid-June is because if there's going to be a change, you are going to start seeing the narratives and the discussions and the conversations start to transition, I would presume, in the next couple of weeks, because it takes a long time to roll out some of these platforms and get it propagated out to everybody and get everybody singing off the same sheet of music. That's not something that happens with the snap of a finger. It takes time. It's a kind of a slow roll into it, and then it becomes the big discussion. Then it becomes the big conversation that is taking place. And so it's going to be very interesting to watch and see how the Democrat Party, which I would presume they're looking at this polling, looking at this data, and starting to wonder, do we have a problem on our hands as we approach the November midterm elections? I'll have some more thoughts on this coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to thank the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show, Melissa Gott and her team, and remind you that if you have any legal questions or challenges, make sure you put your trust in the Law Group right here in Wilmington. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong criminal defense, no matter the issue, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, folks. They're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit their website, lawgroupnc.com. There's a great blog on their website where you can read through a variety of legal challenges and issues and advice. That's over on their website, lawgroupnc.com. You can read about their practice areas, read more details about Melissa Gott and her amazing team. All of those details, lawgroupnc.com. So for any legal questions or challenges, 910-251-6088 or online, lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate Melissa Gott and her team's continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. All right, quick break. We'll jump back into the midterm elections and some of the issues that I see maybe starting to show up for the Democrat Party coming up as the Nick Craig Show continues streaming live this morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Wednesday to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Don't forget to start off your day with the Morning Line email. It is delivered each and every weekday morning at 6:30. Start your day off with the top headlines across the state of North Carolina, plus today in North Carolina history, a look at the stock market futures as well. All of that available completely for free. Sign up this morning, or you can sign up and get that email each and every morning, ncmorningline.com. That's ncmorningline.com. And hopefully you'll take something away from that as we provide that each and every morning right here as part of the Nick Craig Show. All right, back to the topic of discussion on this Wednesday, midterm elections. A lot of time still. It is mid-June. We will be looking at November or early voting starting in October in many places. Election day rolling across in November of this year. And so the question is, based on some of the political polling, based on some of the data that is available right now, again, with the prerequisite that political polling is a snapshot of what is going on at one given period, one given moment of time, do the Democrats have a problem? I believe the answer is yes, and it is in large part due to a lack of any succinct message. You know, J.D. Vance was on The View yesterday, and I will give him all the kudos in the world for sitting down with the vile women of The View who provide absolutely nothing in terms of our national political conversation in any meaningful way, shape, or form. You know, you want to talk about a group where there's no diversity of thought, you can't look any further than The View. They're always agreeing with each other. They hate Republicans. They make it abundantly clear that they hate Republicans, and their entire show is based around that each and every weekday that it's on television. However, the vice president has got a new book out, so he has been doing a pretty large-scale media tour over the last couple of days, and he sat down with the ladies of The View Tuesday morning, and the interview went exactly as you would expect it. The hour-long discussion, couple of commercial breaks in between. Obviously, it's on broadcast television, so you're going to see some of that stuff. The entire conversation revolved around affordability, which I'm frankly not interested in hearing from anybody on the political left. Again, Democrats oversaw, Joe Biden oversaw 9.5% inflation during the summer of 2022, and they had nothing to say about it. It wasn't a problem. You'll remember you heard from high-level Biden administration officials that inflation was transitory. That was the word that they used, another trans word for those on the political left. Inflation was transitory. It wasn't real, regardless of the real wage effect, regardless of the impact. So, frankly, I'm not interested, and I think in large part, the American people are not interested in being lectured by those on the political left about affordability. Now, I have no problem sitting here as somebody that was critical of the Biden administration and their failures as it relates to the economy. I have no problem sitting here and telling you that this administration has a lot of work to do in a relatively short amount of time to deal with some of the price issues. I have no problem saying that. I have no problem being critical of this administration and saying very clearly that this is something that has to be dealt with. J.D. Vance said as much on The View yesterday, that this problem is a little bit larger than they thought. Maybe they bit off a little bit more of the apple than they could chew. And it's something that they're going to continue working on, right? We've seen just in the last 72 hours, oil prices have plummeted to the low 70s. I saw it midday yesterday hitting $70 a barrel. It was at $100 a barrel just a couple of days ago, $120 a barrel back just a few weeks ago. So you've seen a significant decrease there. Now, all of this, of course, is predicated on an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran that we will likely learn more details about in the next couple of days ahead of a signing ceremony, some sort of signing event that is scheduled to take place on Friday. And so as long as, I presume, as long as that goes forward as planned and is signed on Friday, that we will see oil prices continue to plummet, which will dramatically begin the process of reducing gas prices across the nation. And if we see gas start dipping into the low threes, maybe high twos, and that's going to take some time, obviously, but if we see that by November, this discussion about affordability from the Democrats is going to be null and void. There's not going to be any leverage on that. There's not going to be any big wins that Democrats are going to be able to convince American voters with gas prices at, $3.01 or $2.98 a gallon. They're not going to win on that issue at all. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, I'm frankly not interested in being lectured by Democrats about affordability. I'm not. Right? See, this is the tactic that the Democrats use because they've got so much control in the media. They browbeat Republicans into arguing and discussing issues that they have ignored. And J.D. Vance, I think, did a masterful job of this when he was on The View yesterday and kind of following in his footsteps on that. I'm going to sit here and say the same thing. I'm not interested. I don't want to hear from progressives or from Democrats what they think about affordability. I'm not doing it. I'm not interested. I don't care. You are dishonest brokers of truth. You kept your mouth shut when the previous administration oversaw some of the highest inflation that the United States had seen in 40 years, 4 decades. You had nothing to say. Mum was the word. So you're not going to browbeat me into arguing affordability with you. I can sit here as somebody that criticized the Biden administration and now can criticize the Trump administration. I'll make this argument as much as I want, but I'm not going to be browbeat into having this discussion by those on the political left because it's never been a salient argument and it's never been an honest discussion. It just hasn't been. And so This attempt to beat the administration, beat J.D. Vance, and beat Donald Trump into discussing affordability from the same media that ignored this problem and parroted transitory inflation, whatever the hell that means, for months on end under the Biden administration, you're out of your mind if you think I'm going to take that discussion seriously. You're crazy if you think I'm going to buy into that narrative and debate you over that issue. It's just not going to happen. So that's one of their big things. I suspect, and I still have to this point, a lot of confidence in this administration that they can get this thing figured out. That will be a significantly lesser issue as we approach November. It's just, gas is not going to be, now I will say this, if gas is $4 a gallon in October, then there's no question about it. The Democrats are going to have a very, likely a very successful early November election night because of an issue like affordability. But I don't suspect that's going to be the case. So there's a lot of eggs in this affordability basket right now. The other issue, and again, going back to the J.D. Vance interview on The View yesterday, Epstein. Got to talk about the Epstein files. An issue that, again, Democrats, 4 years under the Biden administration, the first 2 years, 2020 to 2022, Democrats controlled the United States House, the United States Senate, and Joe Biden was in the Oval Office. And there was nothing to be said about it. Ro Khanna, Thomas Massie, nobody had anything to say about Jeffrey Epstein during that period of time. And so I think that issue also is one that is likely not to bear a lot of fruit for Democrats, again, because it was not that long ago that if this was such a major issue to be discussed, if this was such a bombshell story, if there were all of these documents that proved that Donald Trump was in cahoots with Jeffrey Epstein, we would know about it. It would have been leaked by the Democrats when they were in charge. It would have been published by the Democrats when they were in charge. It wasn't. It still has not. Nothing has materialized to this point. And so I don't think there's a whole lot of benefit that they're going to see from that issue. And then, of course, they wanted to talk about immigration on The View. And J.D. Vance said, yeah, we've solved this issue. And in large part, he has. The administration has. There's no discussion about immigration going on right now. We don't have caravans waltzing their way through portions of Southern America up through Mexico, making their way to the southern border. It's not happening. Why? Because this administration has dealt with the problem. One of the largest campaign issues that the Trump administration ran on was solving the tens of thousands, hundreds, millions of individuals that had come into the United States illegally under the Biden administration. That issue also solved. And so it creates this very interesting dynamic for Democrats as we approach November. In rounding out our conversation on midterm elections, polling, while still showing Democrats ahead, showing a margin that is just half of what it was in 2018, less than half of what it was in 2006. Those were years in which there were Republicans in the Oval Office, Republicans controlling Congress, and the Democrat Party obviously in the minority. It is still pretty far out, obviously, here in mid-June, but the picture is starting to become clear. The focus is starting to be turned onto this issue that I think paints a major problem going forward. So I was talking a little bit about J.D. Vance's interview on The View yesterday. He sat down with the ladies of The View talking about, well, he was supposed to be talking about his new book. They spent very little time talking about that at all and put all of their emphasis, put all of their arguments into talking about inflation, immigration, and Jeffrey Epstein. Those were the main topics of conversation that they asked J.D. Vance. I don't think those are going to be issues that are going to be very fruitful for the Democrat Party moving forward. Here in North Carolina yesterday, we saw Democrats swarm the North Carolina General Assembly to debate legislation as it relates to voter ID. We saw the very smug chairwoman of the North Carolina Democrat Party in Anderson Clayton give out a fake thank you card or a fake goodbye card to a current representative of the North Carolina General Assembly, Sarah Stevens, saying the card read, "Good riddance. Thank you for supporting pedophiles." This is what the North Carolina Democrat Party, the chairwoman in Anderson Clayton, delivered to Sarah Stevens, who is a current member of the North Carolina General Assembly running for the United States Supreme Court and has decided to resign her position to focus on her Supreme Court race. This is the Democrat Party. This is their big idea. And Anderson Clayton, in all of her wisdom, giving 2 thumbs up. Hee, good riddance. That's your winning political message? A good riddance card? That's what's going to propel Democrats to major successes, not only here in North Carolina, but across the rest of the nation? I mean, are you kidding me? That's going to be the issue? That's going to be the major topic of discussion? You're going to convince North Carolina voters who have consistently voted for Republicans to lead the North Carolina General Assembly for 15 years. You're going to convince them that your party is best tasked with leading this state into the future, that your party has the better ideas that will continue leading North Carolina's success, the #1 state for business, explosive population growth, rapid business growth, all of these things that are making our state very prosperous right now. You're going to convince voters that your party is the best to lead that with holding up red cards and chanting at the North Carolina General Assembly and delivering good riddance cards to members that are resigning from the North Carolina General Assembly, and not resigning in disgrace, resigning because Sarah Stevens is wanting to focus on a statewide campaign to become a member of the North Carolina Supreme Court. That's how you're going to win. North Carolina voters, and I would argue in larger part, American voters, do not find that to be political theatrics that they support. Now, it might get some good clicks on social media, which is where the North Carolina Democrat Party seems to solely live and operate. If you spend any time looking at my Twitter replies, you'll see the same usual characters, the same usual suspects, just posting the same garbage slop over and over and over again. But they fester on social media. But none of this stuff hits reality. None of this stuff actually comes to fruition. It's a lot of time spent complaining, yelling, using profanity. We talked about that on yesterday's show. The great satire piece by a Senate Minority Leader Sidney Batch here in the North Carolina General Assembly. You think voters are going to all of a sudden say, you know what? I've seen enough. Republicans who have led our state to incredible amounts of prosperity and success over the last 15 years, we need to send them packing and give the keys of leadership to terrible attempted sketch comedians that publish videos on Instagram. You think that's going to be the case? You think that's going to convince a majority of North Carolina voters to say, just wipe their hands clean and say, you know, I've seen enough. I've seen it all, and I can't support the Republicans anymore. I'm going to jump over with the unfunny Sidney Batch and Anderson Clayton delivering very large good riddance cards to members resigning from the North Carolina General Assembly. That's your big win. That's your big issue. Here is the issue that Democrats have. They have spent 10 plus years now, in large part, running as anti-Trump, which I think is a ceiling. And that's why we're having this discussion here today, because I do believe that we've kind of hit that political ceiling. There's only so much support that you can get for just saying Orange Man is bad. There's only so many people that will buy into that. There's a lot of voters, predominantly those that may sway in the middle here in North Carolina, our largest voting bloc of unaffiliated voters, that want actual issues, that want actual problems and policies discussed. And they're not getting that right now from the Democrat Party. They have gotten so much, they've got so much stock invested in not only anti-Trump, but just generally anti-Republican. It's just not a winning issue. It is really hard to convince somebody to show up and by simply saying this other person is bad. because the normal reaction is, okay, well, that person is bad. What are you going to provide me that's better, right? Because we know what this person or this group of individuals will do when we're talking about, a majority of one party or the other. We know what they are. You're saying they're bad. That's great. What are you laying out as your alternative? What are you proposing to me as a voter in terms of better solutions? And the Democrats have no answer for that. They don't have any succinct policy ideas or agendas that they can say, these people, referring to the Republicans, these people are bad, we're better, and here's our list of issues that make us better. It doesn't exist. We've watched for weeks now on the floor of the North Carolina General Assembly, Democrats arguing over nonsensical issues, fighting tooth and nail against things like election integrity, fighting tooth and nail to make sure that your property taxes remain high, fighting tooth and nail to make sure that their buddies at the North Carolina Utilities Commission, all appointees by former Democrat Governor Roy Cooper, continue to raise your power bill. This is the winning message. This is the answer to all of said problems here in North Carolina. It's miserable. There's nothing there. They have spent an exorbitant amount of time focused on social media attention and social media activity, and they are seemingly incapable of translating that into real-world tangibles that will propel them to any level of victory moving forward. With all of that said, I am not here today to make a prediction on what is going to happen in November. Midterm elections, as I have stated, tend to, and over the last bit of time, have always favored the party in the minority. And with that, that should give Democrats a huge advantage, a huge upper hand as we approach November. But I suspect that if they don't start providing voters across this country with tangible policies, tangible issues, tangible solutions to problems, that voters are not going to once again buy into orange man bad, Republicans bad for the now 11th or 12th straight year. They have hit a political ceiling with their agendas, with their narratives. That is where they are at this point in time. Speaking of Democrats, congratulations to all of those that live in the city of Wilmington. The all-Democrat majority council at their meeting last night voted to approve a nearly $350 million budget, which will include most individuals within the city of Wilmington seeing their property taxes jump by an approximate 17% when the new budget goes into effect starting July the 1st of this year. That is a complete Democrat majority, 7-0, including Mayor Bill Saffo on the Wilmington City Council. There were 3 different proposals by the city of Wilmington. They included tax rates as high as as low as 4.9 cents per $100 of evaluation. That would be the increase to upwards of almost 6 cents. The city council, the majority there, did choose to go with the lowest of those options at 4.9 cents. However, it is still the largest, at least from what I've been able to ascertain, the largest property tax increase that the city of Wilmington has ever seen in one budget, a whopping 17% increase. And what I can say confidently to everybody is this is what elections look like. Republicans during the 2025 municipal elections in the city of Wilmington sat home. They sat on their ass. They did not get involved. They did not get engaged, and they allowed the Democrat Party to sweep the Wilmington City Council. And so, unfortunately, this is a painful reminder that elections have consequences. You are about to see a massive increase to the tune of hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year, depending on where your property is located and how much it is worth in your property taxes. And there is nobody else to thank but the all Democrat majority Wilmington City Council who made that decision last night. Compare and contrast that to what we saw in New Hanover County with a Republican majority, where they were able to keep the tax rate where it is, to continue to provide high-quality services to the citizens and residents of New Hanover County without putting an additional increased burden on the citizens of the county here in New Hanover. A miserable situation, unfortunately one that was completely and totally predictable. The warnings were here before the municipal elections. If Democrats got complete and total control, this is what would happen in the city of Wilmington. And unfortunately, it has come to reality. So deepest condolences to those that live in the city of Wilmington. I'm fortunate to be just a couple of roads out of the city limits. Enjoy your 17% tax increase, and maybe think about getting involved in the 2027 municipal elections if you are pissed off and unhappy with what is being done with your government within the city of Wilmington, seemingly on a crash course to become the next city of Asheville, the next city of Raleigh, the next city of Charlotte. All of that seemingly on tap here for southeastern North Carolina. We'll continue, and I spend every 2 weeks watching the Wilmington City Council meeting. I'll be keeping an eye on that in the days or in the weeks and months to follow right here on the Nick Craig Show. All right, well, that's going to do it for a Wednesday edition. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. Also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app, and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.